What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's YouTube, Facebook, Instagram real estate lesson. I'm Greg Helbeck, and if you're not familiar with me, I bought well over 100 houses. I do deals every single month with my team. My goal on these videos is to provide as much value as I can in a 10-minute setting. So if you do get value from this video, please like the video, subscribe to it, and share it with a few other people so we can get this message out. The goal is to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers in the next 90 days, and the best way to do that is to subscribe to the channel so you can get more content and help the channel grow. So today I'm going to talk about how to deal with bad tenants. So if you're watching this video and you are a current landlord or you're an aspiring landlord, you are going to run into bad tenants. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how good your screening is. It doesn't matter. If you're going to do this business over the long haul, you're going to run into bad tenants. And you need to understand how to deal with the bad tenants, because what will happen is if you don't know how to deal with bad tenants and you don't know what to expect, it's going to be a lot harder and more stressful than it needs to be, okay? So when I'm running into a scenario where I unfortunately or fortunately have dealt with a decent amount of bad tenants at this point. So at the end of the day, this is the main thing I will say. Okay, if you're trying to deal with a tenant who you absolutely want to remove from your property, whether they're not paying enough rent, whether they're not paying rent at all, been there, or they need to leave for some reason, whether you're going to go live in the unit or whatever, you're selling it, you need to communicate to the tenant in a manner that basically shows some level of empathy, because you got to respect people, because you can't just be a dickhead for no reason. But at the same time, you need to communicate to them that they have no option and there's no way they're staying in the property. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I say with tenants, right? So first things first, in my opinion, I don't ever like the tenants to know that I'm personally the owner. I always tell them I'm the property manager, which is true at this point. And that just kind of separates, the confrontation, because if you're the property manager, you're kind of playing good cop, bad cop. So that's my style. I like to do it that way. I don't want them knowing I own the property. So that's just my philosophy. But anyway, I will reach out to them and I will simply tell them that there's really two options they have. They can leave the property within a reasonable timeline, usually 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the state you're in. And they can have some money in their hand from me in order to leave. Or if they don't want to leave the property and they want to go through the eviction process, the money that I'm going to get, the money that I would have given them to leave, which is pretty generous because you technically don't got to give them shit, is going to go to the eviction attorney, and the eviction attorney will get the eviction filed, and eventually the sheriff will get them out of the property, usually by force, okay? So I communicate with the tenant, listen, you're going to have to leave, unfortunately. I appreciate you being a tenant of mine for a while. You're going to have 60, 90, days to get out, and I'll give you $2,500 just to move because I know it's expensive nowadays, and I had no problem helping you out, right? Generally, when you do that, at least from my experience, even though the logical, normal, rational thing to do, especially if you're a tenant when you don't own the property, unless you're in San Francisco, which is a whole different story, is to accept that offer and pretty much say, okay, I had a good run here and it's time to go. The landlord's going to give me some money to move because he's a nice guy or a nice girl. And that's great. However, the tenants that I deal with, generally they don't do that. So what they do is they say, no, I'm not leaving. No, I want more money. No, I don't have another place to go. They're going to give you some bullshit excuse. And then when you hear the excuse, okay, because at that point you have been reasonable with the bad tenant. You have made them an offer that's pretty generous for the most part. And you've demonstrated to them that you're not going to kick them to the curb in 2 weeks. You're going to give them some reasonable time to leave, and you're going to give them some money. Once they tell you they're not going to leave and you're going to have to use force to get them out, simply, this is what I do. Once I know we have to do an eviction, I simply remove communication, between the tenant and myself. I engage an eviction attorney, and I let the eviction attorney take that process to court, okay? You don't want to get involved with the tenants on a personal level or really on a communicative basis unless there's an emergency at the property when you're in the eviction process, because it doesn't add any value to your situation, and it doesn't help the tenant at all either. You want to let the attorneys do what they're paid to do by doing an eviction and removing yourself out of the scenario. And the reason you want to do that too is because I've experienced this the hard way so many times. It's honestly embarrassing. I've made so many mistakes already being a rookie landlord. Is when you're going to do an eviction, it's going to be expensive and it's time consuming and it's relatively stressful, right? At least the first one. So what I will do is I'm going to pretty much outsource that to an attorney. And that way I'm going to remove the emotional energy that would be extracted from me from the tenant. And I'm going to pretty much put it on the shelf and wait for the court date and have them out of the property. What you don't want to do is you don't want to keep communicating to the tenants and texting them and telling them that they should leave and telling them that the eviction's going on. You do not want to do that. You want to simply have the legal process do its thing. They're going to get served the notice. They're going to have to appear in court. If they don't appear in court, usually gets adjourned the first time. If they don't appear the second time, the sheriff will come and get them out. So you want to leave the eviction process on its own and let the eviction process do its thing, depending on the state you're in watching this video. I mean, some states are slow like New York, some states are fast like Texas, so it's really going to depend on your local government. But you just want to remove yourself emotionally once you're doing an eviction, right? And the key there is when you outsource that to the attorney will do their job, hopefully, and they'll get them out in a reasonable time frame. But before you do that, the big takeaway I want to share, and I'm going to actually tell you a story about how I did this, or actually, I'm going to tell you a story that I'm actually doing this because it's still going on as of this video. You want to make them that offer, like I said in the beginning. You want to make them an offer to go that's reasonable, right? And depending on where it is, you'll have to probably offer more money or less money. Like in New York, it's expensive, so I generally will offer them more money because it is more expensive to move. But if you go forward with an honest offer with integrity and you obviously do what you say you're going to do, assuming they take the offer, then, you shouldn't feel bad about doing an eviction because at the end of the day, it's your property and they don't own it. So at the end of the day, you should be able to do whatever you want because the landlord owns the property. They had the money. They bought the property. They're taking the risk. It is what it is. However, generally from my experience, tenants don't really take that. They say, fuck you, buddy, we're going to court, and you end up going to court, and it is what it is. So I'm going to tell you about an eviction that I'm in the middle of going through right now because unlike a lot of real estate gurus, I'm actually in the business doing it on a daily basis. So that's why hopefully these videos are extra valuable because a lot of my stories are recent from the trenches. So I bought a property in 2021. It was a townhouse in upstate New York, Hudson Valley. In my opinion, that's not really upstate New York. But anyway, bought this thing. And there was a tenant in there, and I basically said that you can stay for a little bit, you can pay some rent, and then once this COVID thing, fiasco goes away, we'll talk about what our next steps are. COVID, weird, kind of slithered away over the ongoing year. And I told them, listen, you can stay in this property and pay market rent, or actually, no, I told them they can stay in the property and pretty much pay my break even because I didn't really care about the cash flow because it was a good deal. I had a lot of equity in it. Or if you can't do that, then you're gonna have to go. And they agreed originally to pay the, whatever my basis was. I think it was like $1,800 or something like that. They agreed verbally. When I went to go raise the rent, they said, we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. So then I turned around and I said, well, listen, if that's the case, then I'm going to get an eviction attorney and we're going to serve you and you're going to get evicted. And that's what they took. They took that. We're actually in the middle of doing an eviction right now. Court date is in, I think it's in a week or 2 weeks, or it's in like 10 days from now, or no, it's in a week. I don't know. The court date I think is next week. But anyway, they're going to go to court. Hopefully we'll win and we can get them out. But just like I said on the beginning part of this video, I gave them the offer. They rejected. I actually offered them $5,000. They said no. Gave them the offer. They rejected the offer. Once they rejected the offer, I knew we were doing the eviction. I disengaged from them. I removed communication from them, and I do not interact with them anymore because it just doesn't make sense, and it's just going to get me frustrated. So do what I said in this video. Generally, if you're a landlord, it'll find more success. I hope you got value from this. If you did, once again on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel, like the video. If you want to do business with me, if you're in the Hudson Valley or San Diego, email me, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com. That's greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, and I will see you on the next video.